Hi, welcome to the Dieku Podcast. I'm Gary Snow. Today, I'm once again joined by Andrew Cawood, the creator of the popular monster book series, which featured Monsters of the Underworld, City, Wilderness, Dungeon, and Feyland 1 and 2. And I have a couple copies here to kind of show off. They're excellent books. And Andrew is currently kickstarting the World of Myrr, which is the fantasy setting in which the monster books have been based in. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, Gary, nice to be here.
And you've previously joined me, and we talked about some of your, I think at that time it was the Monsters of Feyland, and it struck me, and I was like, I really like it. I ordered this through Drive-Thru RPG, as well as the Monsters of the Underworld, and fantastic books, and I love the art vibe, and we've already kind of discussed this before we started recording, but you are in the secret clubhouse of the Dieku podcast, because I don't cover 5e stuff ever, for probably obvious reasons, but you have made it in the secret clubhouse because I just love your stuff and it has that old school vibe that I like.
Much appreciated, Gary. And we're trying to make all our products now for as many systems as possible. And the World of Myrr especially, it's actually built for any system. There's not a lot of mechanics in the World book, and even our last monster book, the Dungeon book, which will come out in January, that has conversion tables for the stat blocks as well.
And for those that haven't seen the interview with Andrew that we've done before, I'll put the link up above that you can check it out. So we don't need to dive into your origin story like we did before, but since we did last talk to you, you've done a few more monster books, and now you are getting into for the World book, as you said. And just tell us, how has the industry been since our last visit, which is maybe about a year and a half ago? You've put out some more books, and just the industry and the OGL in general. How's that been for you?
Yeah, I think it's been a challenging year this year. Initially, a lot of people were spurred to support third-party companies more than ever earlier this year after Wizards decided to make it about face. But everybody really saw colors, the true colors. So it has been a challenging year. Originally, that did help a lot of the third-party companies, indie companies, but the rest of the year, not so much. And I think also the change in the market compared to what it was like during the pandemic, because people were at home playing board games and tabletop games. That really helped. So it has been a challenge. And I've spoken closely with the artists that we work with a lot, Travis Hansen, about our plans and how we're going to actually have to change our focus and what we're going to do for the next few years.
And in particular, like what kind of costs have kind of hit the bottom line for publishers that you see across the board?
Well, for sure with the Kickstarter, there's bigger companies in there now. It's much more of a challenging landscape. The cost of printing and shipping has gone through the roof. So it's hard to make a printed version of your books these days. It's expensive. I know it's a real challenge for us here in Canada. The most expensive place for us to ship our books to is Canada, which makes no sense. It's cheaper for me to send a book to Melbourne, Australia, or Slovakia, or pretty much anywhere in the world except for Canada, because our postal system is so expensive. So shipping and printing, and many more competitors in the marketplace. Although unfortunately, because of the challenge this year, some of those people and companies are not even around. And then, of course, the biggest challenge is getting yourself seen in the world of, all these visuals with streaming shows. And, a good example is yesterday, Cyber Monday. Pretty much every company in the world is marketing. And I know for our Kickstarter, that was a challenge yesterday.
And I have to say, you do a really good job on social media. I follow you. I'm always seeing your good stuff, whether it's memes or product updates and that kind of thing. Have you also noticed a tapering off of organic reach compared to previous times, and just the nature of social media platforms? I mean, I've kind of noticed that it's very hard to get eyeballs on your stuff nowadays.
Yeah, it has definitely been more challenging. It depends, like when Twitter changed over to X, at first it slowed down for, I'd say, several months in terms of the, number of people, new followers and that sort of thing. But it has improved. It's sort of, I think it's finding its place more now. And there, but what it's done, I think, more than ever, and I think you just alluded to that, is it's kind of broken up the community and gamers so that there's a certain group in general on X, and then there's another group who's on Facebook, and then there's another group who's on Instagram, and then Blue Sky, and then yeah, it's and then YouTube has another sort of, so it's kind of I think we're in this time of transition where it's harder for these smaller companies than ever to get seen, and at the same time the cost of making products. So it's a challenging shift now, and I think we're seeing that even outside of RPGs, right? We're seeing that with many online companies. They're having similar challenges, and yeah, it's you've got to really find new ways to be creative. And like I said, we're changing our approach. So instead of making one big book a year when we had the Monster series, starting next year, we're going to have 3 or 4 smaller books a year. That's our plan right now.
Cool. And enough doom and gloom. Let's get on to some like positive stuff, which includes the World of Myrr. So I know as part of your monster books, there's always kind of allusions or alluding to this world. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So yeah, we gave a few hints there, here and there, about the world, and we didn't put too much of Mirror into the monster books because we wanted game masters to really do their own thing. And at the same time, the creatures that were directly related to Mirror and were really strongly connected, we started to give more details, especially in the Wilderness book. So this world is a world that's been affected by one man. So that's saying, one person can change a world. Well, this world is the perfect example. That wizard who's on the cover driving the wagon here, he is Mirr. He is Oswald Mirr. And because of his magic, this whole world has changed. And it's 9 continents, but it's really, these continents have been so separated that you're really getting 9 worlds in one, 9 very distinct places. And the change that Oswald really has done, this wizard, is that these continents, because of the oceans, nobody really traveled very much. The oceans are so dangerous. Sea monsters and dragon turtles and all these creatures make the oceans, almost nobody made successful journeys. So these communities stayed apart, these worlds stayed apart. And now he's created portals that are helping people to travel, which is changing the whole world. And not only in the world, but people can travel to Feyland and the Underworld and other worlds as well. The other big thing about Mirror is that we've made it like Greyhawk, which is really our inspiration. It has a lot of space for game masters, so you can still homebrew. So we've got a template there that you can use, and very easily there are ways that you can put your adventures in here. And we're even going to give guides, and we have a hint of how to do that in our preview booklet on the Kickstarter page. But in the final product, we're going to give much more detailed resources for game masters of how they can use the world.
Cool. And this might be a really good time to talk about the art again, Travis, and the art, and just like, it's been to me, such a nice hook, and you get to share it on your social media accounts, and just like the fact that you've been able to have that consistency throughout all your products is pretty amazing.
Yeah, very fortunate that we really hit it off with Travis. Originally just asked him to do one piece in one of our earlier books, and then eventually asked him if he'd be interested in doing a monster book. And like you say, the look of those monster books and of this book, to have consistent art by the same person, something very unique. And this time Travis is doing the graphic design and layout, so it's going to be much more artistic than any of our books so far.
Cool. And as far as the art goes, and I kind of said to you before, to me, I think it's got an OSR vibe to it, and that was what really drew me into it compared to some of the stuff that you see in WotC stuff. And I just like fell in love with it. So if you're looking at this going, well, you know, it's 5e or whatever, OSR people, check this out because I think you're going to like it. And as we, you know, mentioned, you can play this with any system, though, on that note.
Yes, any system. The main book is 200 pages, as it says there. There's the PDF, softcover, and hardcover. And yeah, and then Oswald's story is part of what we've created for the world, but you don't have to use that. But that's something that's unique about it. And then there's a huge amount of detail. Again, if you remember back to the Greyhawk setting in the 80s, which I loved and still use it, Gygax gave a lot of details on each kingdom. You could read all this information about who lived there and what resources were there and what armor the local guard and the military wore, what weapons they used, and there's history. So that's what we've done. And we've done it not only for the kingdoms, but for every single village, town, and city in the world of 9 continents. You're going to get that. You're going to get, so the detail is, you know, I've never seen a book like that, but it will help you so much in your games to give depth to, you know, to the story. There'll be things like, you know, you're in this village, here are the fish in the lake nearby that you might find if you go fishing. Or there happens to be a writer in this town and he's written a book about bows and about archery. You know, this is the name of the author. This is what the book's like. And there's going to be details about the relationships in the settlements. And then all the monsters we've had in our series, they're all going to be in this world as well.
Cool. And here is another good example of one of the monsters. When you talk about the monsters, some of the awesome kind of names to it, it's like put a unique spin. Like just when you think you don't have enough monsters, like, or you couldn't come up with new monsters, you did in all your books.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. We go back to the source in terms of we do have a lot of the traditional creatures. We have dragons and giants and orcs and goblins, but then we've added a lot of new things like this creature right here. Here's Oswald with one of these portals that he's created. So one of the negative consequences of the portals is that some of these dangerous creatures from other worlds have arrived in Mirr. And this one here is the Ragnar, which is this massive titan who lives on one of the northern continents. And yeah, there's a lot of ways of you know, making new creatures. And there were also opportunities that I thought, why hasn't somebody done this? I mean, some of them are humorous, like, you know, the invisible stalker is a quite you know, iconic D&D monster. So in the new dungeon book, I made the visible stalker. So I was, you know, there's some that there's a humor play on words and things like that. That one I always thought funny because, you know, there still could be an elemental stalker that you could see. It's not nearly as dangerous, but he's still still quite tough. Yeah, and there's lots of characters and creatures that we came up with. Another one, actually, to look back at the old books, on the cover of the dungeon book there, that is a half ogre creature we've made in the new dungeon book. So he was inspired by the half ogre from the Dragon magazine in the 80s.
Cool. And then you mentioned the continent. So we have a kind of blown up map here, and we can kind of zoom in on it. But so is this originally from your homebrew world, and like it's just kind of grown into its own thing?
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, when I came back to D&D, I started with a new group. I didn't know anybody, and I made an encounter based around a village. And after the first night, it went really well. So then I grew that to the neighboring hills and forest. And I added some storylines that I knew I could follow if things grew. And eventually that became an entire continent. And that's where I've had 3 groups over the last 10 years. Most of that groups have played on that continent for years and years. And that continent is that tiny, small continent in the middle of the world. So it's just grown and grown and grown.
We'll zoom in. So in the top left quadrant, you got Norvald and Zog, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Oswald is a wizard of Zog.
Yeah, that's where he started out, and that's where the humans began. That's their homeland and the biggest continent. And then the one migration that happened successfully was a few people got from Zog to Mirr, that central continent, and Oswald was the leader of that group of people who originally settled to Mirr. But then partly because of the portals and partly other things that have happened, travel between those two continents is almost impossible now, other than these new rift gates that have started to open up. So, you know, and then Norvald has kind of a more northern, like barbarians from Greyhawk, sort of a Viking type people. And then you have Nairn, where the elves are from, Mazan, where the dwarves are from. Galen's kind of a new settled area. Halflings have arrived there now, and that I think is quite unusual. It's sort of a Western style world with halfling cowboys battling undead. So there's a lot of traditional fantasy with knights and you know, monk brotherhoods and wizards and dragons, but there's also some new things like Galen with the halfling cowboys. Tyrannos is sort of a Jurassic Park kind of world of titans and reptiles. And then Mazan is a continent with volcanoes, the homeland of the dwarves, but now they have a big civil war going on as well.
Cool. So there's like lots of factions, lots of story hooks that you can kind of get involved with.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's Genos, which is not as populated, but there's a really hardy group of people who are just trying to survive in a very different kind of landscape than most of the world. And then in the far north, there's Voth, which has a group of rebel elves who have now become snow elves. And they're sort of like the most evil empire. They have plans to take over the whole world because they have greater technology than everybody else.
And I'm going to now take a little bit of a departure, and I'm going to pop onto the stage. You actually have on your Kickstarter, people can download a sample of the book, and I'll just kind of flip through it. And as we go through, you can see some of the really nice art and kind of the layout and what to expect inside of it, and some other awesome monsters. And so when you approach this, we just talked about, like, you know, the monster books are super heavy art, but this one's kind of a little bit more detail as far as text heavy and detail of the world.
Yeah,
there's still art.
Yeah, there'll still be a lot of art, and there's a great piece here. This is the Voth I was just telling you about. So it's not a crazy advance in technology, but they do have airships, and nobody else has that. So here they are, sort of scouting out where they plan to invade, and there will be some art, and original art by Travis Hansen. And because he's doing the layout, this is going to be a more dynamic presentation than before, because he is the one who's laying it out and putting the art in.
That's always a bonus when you can, like a sample like this, where you can put the art over top of tables and kind of mix it up and be able to kind of work and meld the art and the text together.
Right, right. And here you can see there's also going to be magic items that we've, and they're going to be tied into Mirror. So there's one. We give you a preview here of the continents.
Okay.
Yeah, so we go through each of the continents, just give you an overview. So this is going to be similar to what's in the book, but we'll have more. And it gives you, you know, encounter tables, events, some of the factions that will be there, and then a glimpse of the world map. So we'll have more detailed maps, but in this case, because we have maps for the continents as well, but in this case, you know, here's a glimpse of the big world map as well.
Any plans for like a nice big fold-out map a la Greyhawk one day?
Yeah, that would be nice. What we do here, and what we will give our Kickstarter backers, you know, if we get into the first or second stretch goal, we're going to have more options for maps where people can get the high-res maps from us. And then what we've done here is print those out and then laminate them when we use them at our table.
Well, it's looking good, and it's exciting. I love the work that you guys are doing. And how much fun is it to kind of be doing this on a regular basis? All the monster books and now the World of Myrr, like it's kind of a nice, don't want to say a book end because it's still going, but it kind of does wrap all those monster books up so nicely into the world that you're building.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've had, more fun in each book, and definitely this one, it's a lot of work and a lot of, play testing, and, a lot of what has happened in Mirr too. The players in my groups have helped develop. Some of their NPCs are now in the world. So yeah, it's, I couldn't ask for a better job to be doing, that's for sure. If I knew I was doing this when I was, 12 years old, 14 years old, I would have been stunned. When I did get the first printed copy of the Monsters of Feyland book, that was like a big turning point. That was like, I wasn't sure where things were going, but when I got that book, I understood a bit better. And this is another level of that because, I can see this book, somebody taking it off their shelf and just sitting down for hours and reading and just getting absorbed into this, unique world. I think there's some traditional elements that we've kept and archetypes, but we've added a lot more, and there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of detail that you could use this for years and years.
Well, it's certainly something that I put my money where my mouth is. I ordered these. These were not freebies. I really liked them. So I think it just spoke to me as far as the kind of game that I like. And once again, you're in the secret clubhouse of our little indie space here. So if you're looking at this and you see the 5e, don't think like that. It's kind of got that OSR vibe to it in my mind. So that's my endorsement of it for you. And you should check it out. And so where can people find it's on Kickstarter if they search the World of Myrr? Also social media. Tell us where we can find you.
Sure. Yeah. Our main website is also worldofmyrr.com, the MYRR. And then we're on X and Facebook as well, with Cawood Publishing or Mirr, Instagram, all over. And this Kickstarter just has 8 days left. That's the other thing we've changed is instead of doing these really long 30-day campaigns, we've decided to move to smaller, shorter campaigns. And this is our first test of that.
Well, you often see that there's always that spike at the beginning for Kickstarters, and then there's like that long trench of you sitting there going, what's happening? What's happening? And then finally, when they get that 48-hour notice, it kind of picks up at the end. But
yeah,
that's part of the challenge of being an indie designer, that you are always trying to test and see what works and what you could do better. And any advice for those out there listening that are thinking about kickstarting their own games?
Sure. Well, I should say too, originally I thought I'm going to make this company and I'm going to inspire game masters to have great depth in their games. But then I realized actually it was inspiring people to have fun in their life and, actually inspiring them as well. And now what I'm realizing is just existing as a company and putting creative work out, that is inspiring in itself. So you're and that was really obvious with what happened earlier this year. We're literally the rebels in the Star Wars movies. So I would say, just keep making something unique. There's a lot of talk about collaboration and listening to everybody. And I think that there's room for that. And of course, I work with other people. Right now, there's a team of 3 making the new Mirr book. At the same time, I think there's not enough talk about people just doing what they want to do and listening to their own voice. So that would be my biggest advice is don't listen so much to other people. If I listened all the time to what I hear on social media or even my friends and family, I wouldn't have got anything done.
Well, and I also on that kind of on a side note to that, I always appreciate when there's like almost, I don't want to say singular, but kind of a singular view of a product. or a game or whatever you want to call it, that like somebody has like envisioned it and they're bringing it to life. And sometimes when you get into that collaborative space where it's like by committee, you just end up with like generic kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So between your vision and the art and your play group, I think you've done a really good job of bringing together the World of Myrr.
Thanks, Gary.
And Andrew, thanks for coming on the show. Best of luck with this Kickstarter. If you are watching, indie game designers need your support. So get out there and support Andrew and the World of Myrr. I'll put all the links in the details in the show notes. And Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Gary.